Today is the 21st of August, and we are at the chapter 42, Gamani Samyutta. So now we come to Sutta 42.8. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Nalanda in Pavarika's mango grove. Then Asibandaka-putta, the head man, a lay disciple of the Nigantas, approached the Blessed One, exchanged greetings and all that, and sat down to one side. The Blessed One then said to him as he was sitting to one side, "In what way, head man, does Niganta Nataputta teach the Dhamma to his disciples?" Noble Sir, Niganta Nataputta teaches the Dhamma to his disciples thus: anyone at all who destroys life is bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Anyone at all who takes what is not given is bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Anyone at all who engages in sexual misconduct is bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Anyone at all who speaks falsehood is bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. One is led on to rebirth by the manner in which one usually dwells. It is in such a way, Venerable Sir, that Niganta Nataputta teaches the Dhamma to his disciples. And the Buddha said, "If, head man, it were the case that one is led on to rebirth by the manner in which one usually dwells, then according to Niganta Nataputta's word, no one at all would be bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. What do you think, head man? In the case of a person who destroys life, if one compares one occasion with another, whether by day or by night, which is more frequent, the occasions when he is destroying life or those when he is not doing so?" And Asibandaka-putta said, "In the case of a person who destroys life, Venerable Sir, if one compares one occasion with another, whether by day or by night, the occasions when he is destroying life are infrequent, while those when he is not doing so are frequent." And the Buddha said, "So, head man, if it were the case that one is led on to rebirth by the manner in which one usually dwells, then according to Niganta Nataputta's word, no one at all would be bound for a state of misery, bound for hell." Stop here for a moment. So this Niganta Nataputta says that one is led on to rebirth by the manner in which one usually dwells. So if a person is a killer, whether he is a butcher or he is a soldier or what, the Buddha says that in one day, 24 hours, how much time does he spend killing? Maybe an hour or two. But the rest of the time, that means 23 hours or 22 hours, he does not do any killing. So most of the time, he does not do any killing, and that is the manner in which he usually dwells. So he wouldn't go to hell, because most of the time he doesn't kill. What do you think, head man? In the case of a person who takes what is not given, or who engages in sexual misconduct, or who speaks falsehood, if one compares one occasion with another, whether by day or by night, which is more frequent, the occasions when he is speaking falsehood, or those when he is not speaking falsehood? In the case of a person who speaks falsehood, Venerable Sir, if one compares one occasion with another, whether by day or by night, the occasions when he is speaking falsehood are infrequent, while those when he is not speaking falsehood are frequent. Then the Buddha said, "So, head man, if it were the case that one is led on to rebirth by the manner in which one usually dwells, then according to Niganta Nataputta's word, no one at all would be bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Here, head man, some teacher holds such a doctrine and view as this: anyone at all who destroys life, who takes what is not given, who engages in sexual misconduct, who speaks falsehood, is bound for a state of misery, is bound for hell." Then the disciple has full confidence in that teacher. It occurs to him, "My teacher holds such a doctrine and view as this: anyone at all who destroys life is bound for a state of misery, bound for hell." Now I have destroyed life, so I too am bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Thus he acquires such a view. If he does not abandon that assertion and that state of mind, and if he does not relinquish that view, then according to his deserts, he will be, as it were, dropped off in hell. It occurs to him, my teacher holds such a doctrine and view as this. Anyone at all who takes what is not given is bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Now I have taken what is not given, so I too am bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Thus he acquires such a view. If he does not abandon that assertion, he will be, as it were, dropped off in hell. It occurs to him, my teacher holds such a doctrine and view as this. Anyone at all who engages in sexual misconduct is bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Now I have engaged in sexual misconduct, so I too am bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Thus he acquires such a view. If he does not abandon that assertion, that view, he will be, as it were, dropped off in hell. It occurs to him, my teacher holds such a doctrine and view as this. Anyone at all who speaks falsehood is bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Now I have spoken falsehood, so I too am bound for a state of misery, bound for hell. Thus he acquires such a view. If he does not abandon that assertion, that view, he will be, as it were, dropped off in hell. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says that this teacher says that anyone at all who breaks the precepts is bound for hell. So his disciple, the disciple of that teacher, he has full confidence in that teacher. He believes thoroughly what the teacher says. So because these precepts, it's not possible to keep 100%. So because he has broken some of the precepts, so he believes what the teacher says, that he is bound for hell. And then the Buddha says, if he holds such a view and such an assertion, and his state of mind is like that, so when he dies, he will naturally go to hell because he believes that he's going to hell. So which reminds us there's a lot of wrong views around, and a lot of people believe their teacher and believe all these wrong views. And the Buddha says, if you have wrong view about karma, then you either one of two rebirths, one is hell, the other one is the animal realm. Then the Buddha continued. But here, head man, Tathagata arises in the world, an Arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, fortunate, knower of the world, unsurpassed teacher of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans, the enlightened one, the blessed one. In many ways he criticizes and censures the destruction of life, and he says, abstain from the destruction of life. He criticizes and censures the taking of what is not given, and he says, abstain from taking what is not given. He criticizes and censures sexual misconduct, and he says, abstain from sexual misconduct. He criticizes and censures false speech, and he says, abstain from false speech. Then his disciple has full confidence in that teacher. He reflects thus. In many ways, the Blessed One criticizes and censures the destruction of life, and he says, abstain from the destruction of life. Now, I have destroyed life to such and such an extent. That wasn't proper, that wasn't good. But though I feel regret over this, that evil deed of mine cannot be undone. Having reflected thus, he abandons the destruction of life, and he abstains from the destruction of life in the future. Thus there comes about the abandoning of that evil deed. Thus there comes about the transcending of that evil deed. He reflects thus, in many ways the Blessed One criticizes and censures the taking of what is not given, and he says, abstain from taking what is not given. Now I have taken what is not given to such and such an extent. That wasn't proper, that wasn't good. But though I feel regret over this, that evil deed of mine cannot be undone. Having reflected thus, he abandons the taking of what is not given, and he abstains from taking what is not given in the future. Thus there comes about the abandoning of that evil deed. Thus there comes about the transcending of that evil deed. He reflects thus, in many ways the Blessed One criticizes and censures sexual misconduct, and he says, abstain from sexual misconduct. Now I have engaged in sexual misconduct to such and such an extent. That wasn't proper, that wasn't good. But though I feel regret over this, that evil deed of mine cannot be undone. Having reflected thus, he abandons sexual misconduct, and he abstains from sexual misconduct in the future. Thus there comes about the abandoning of that evil deed. Thus there comes about the transcending of that evil deed. He reflects thus, in many ways the Blessed One criticizes and censures false speech. And he says, abstain from false speech. Now, I have spoken falsehood to such and such an extent. That wasn't proper, that wasn't good. Although I feel regret over this, that evil deed of mine cannot be undone. Having reflected thus, he abandons false speech, and he abstains from false speech in the future. Thus there comes about the abandoning of that evil deed. Thus there comes about the transcending of that evil deed. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, he's unlike that Niganta Nataputta. That Niganta Nataputta says that if you break any of the precepts, you will definitely go to hell. But the Buddha doesn't say that. Buddha says breaking the precepts is not skillful, not wholesome. Criticizes the breaking of the precepts. And the Buddha encourages his disciples to abstain from wrong conduct. So to keep the precepts. So when a person follows the Buddha and he reflects that he has broken the precepts, he knows that he should not have done it. But the Buddha doesn't say that he will go to hell. So he realizes that it's not good. So he makes a determination that in the future he will not do it again. So that's the way we practice the precepts. Just like a child or a baby learning to walk. When the baby falls down, he gets up and tries again. Falls down, he gets up again. Gets up as many times as is necessary. So in the same way, when we keep the precepts, every now and then we break the precepts. But doesn't matter how many times we break. We just keep on trying to behave better. So especially when we reflect, before we came to the Dhamma, we did a lot of wrong things. At that time, because of ignorance, we did a lot of wrong things. We broke the precepts. But now that we understand that it's not good, so we don't walk that path, because that path goes to the woeful plains. So we slowly change our character for the better. So slowly as we change our character for the better, and then slowly we become like the ugly duckling, becoming a beautiful swan. And the Buddha continued, having abandoned the destruction of life, he abstains from the destruction of life. Having abandoned the taking of what is not given, he abstains from taking what is not given. Having abandoned sexual misconduct, he abstains from sexual misconduct. Having abandoned false speech, he abstains from false speech. Having abandoned divisive, actually it's not divisive speech, this should be malicious speech. Having abandoned malicious speech. Malicious speech means speech that is motivated by anger. And there are two types of speech motivated by anger. One is slandering somebody else, telling lies, slandering another person, or hearing A talking bad about B. You go and tell B, A said such and such a thing, and you cause A and B to quarrel. So that is divisive speech. So this is having abandoned malicious speech. He abstains from malicious speech. Having abandoned harsh speech, he abstains from harsh speech. Having abandoned idle chatter, he abstains from idle chatter. Having abandoned covetousness, he is uncovetous. Having abandoned ill will and hatred, he has a mind without ill will. Having abandoned wrong view, he is one of right view. Stop here for a moment. So here is a list of all of the 10 unwholesome karmas. This is something you must always keep in mind. You must memorize these 10 unwholesome karmas because it is very important to abstain from these 10 unwholesome karmas. They are karmas through the body, speech and mind. Through the body, there are 3 wrong karmas, 3 evil karmas. One is killing, another one is taking what is not given or stealing. Third is sexual misconduct or adultery. So the body, 3 evil body karmas. Then 4 evil verbal karmas. Through the mouth, we can do wrong by false speech, lying. Secondly, malicious speech. Then thirdly, harsh speech or coarse speech, using foul language and loud speech and all that. Then the fourth is idle chatter, gossip. So through the mouth we can do 4 wrong karmas. And then mental karma, there are 3. First is covetousness, greed for other people's things, greed for other people's property, greed for other people's husband or wife, is covetousness. And then the second mental evil karma is having a lot of ill will, having a lot of anger and hatred in the mind. That is the second one. The third one is wrong view. Wrong view means not believing in karma vipaka, not believing that after death there is rebirth, that there is life, not believing that there are holy men who walk the spiritual path and can become liberated and all that. So that is wrong view. So these 10 always keep in mind, not to do any one of these 10 unwholesome karmas, because if you constantly do any one of these evil karmas, can bring you to hell. And the Buddha continued. Then headman, that noble disciple who is thus devoid of covetousness, devoid of ill will, unconfused, clearly comprehending, ever mindful, dwells pervading 1 quarter with the mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the 2nd quarter, the 3rd quarter, and the 4th quarter, thus above, below, across, and everywhere, and to all as to himself, he dwells pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with loving kindness, vast, exalted, measureless, without hostility, without ill will. Just as a strong conch blower can easily send his signal to the 4 quarters, so too, when the liberation by mind of loving kindness is developed and cultivated in this way, any limited karma that was done does not remain there, does not persist there. Stop here for a moment. This one is liberation by mind or release by mind of loving kindness. That means the mind is so strong, it radiates loving kindness. We can call it radiation by mind of loving kindness. It was pervading 1 quarter with a mind imbued with compassion, karuna, with a mind imbued with joy, mudita, with a mind imbued with equanimity, upekha. Likewise the 2nd quarter, the 3rd quarter, and the 4th quarter, thus above, below, across, and everywhere, and to all as to himself, he dwells pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with these 4 qualities. Vast, exalted, measureless, without hostility, without ill will. Just as a strong conch blower can easily send his signal to the 4 quarters, so too when the liberation by mind of equanimity or any of the 4 is developed and cultivated in this way, any limited karma that was done does not remain there, does not persist there. When this was said, Asibandaka Putta, the headman, said to the Blessed One, "Magnificent, Venerable Sir, magnificent." And he took refuge in the triple gems. And he said, "From today let the Blessed One remember me as a lay follower who has gone for refuge for life." In other words, he changed his religion from the Nigantas to the Buddha. So this quite a nice sutta about karma. So always remember in the Buddha's teachings, if we do wrong, we don't regret too much. Always think of the future. What is past, don't go and have a lot of remorse. Only have the remorse to the extent that we make a determination not to repeat it. Don't be like some people, they have remorse over the past and they commit suicide. The next sutta is 42.9. On one occasion, the Blessed One, while wandering on tour among the Kosalans, together with a large sangha of monks, arrived at Nalanda. He stayed there at Nalanda in Pavarika's mango grove. Stop here for a while. This Kosala is one of the 2 powerful countries during the Buddha's time, Kosala and Magadha. And the king of Kosala is Pasenadi. I think we read one Samyutta about Pasenadi, Raja of Kosala. So he stayed at Nalanda, at Pavarika's mango grove. Now on that occasion, Nalanda was in the grip of famine, time of scarcity, with crops blighted and turned to straw. On that occasion, Niganta Nataputta was residing at Nalanda, together with a large retinue of Nigantas. Then Asibandaka Putta, the headman, a lay disciple of the Nigantas, approached Niganta Nataputta, paid homage to him. and sat down to one side. Nikaya Nataputta then said to him, "Come, headman, refute the doctrine of the ascetic Gotama. Then a good report concerning you will be spread about thus. Asibandaka Putta, the headman, has refuted the doctrine of the ascetic Gotama, who is so powerful and mighty." Stop here for a moment. So, the Buddha with a large Sangha of monks was at Nalanda. And this Nikaya Nataputta, he also was in the same place, Nalanda, with a large retinue of his monks. So he was jealous of the Buddha, because the Buddha had a very good reputation. So because he was jealous, he asked his lay follower Asibandaka Putta to go and argue with the Buddha and win the argument. But he himself dare not go, you see. He's very smart. Instead of going himself, he go and ask this headman to go and argue for him. And then this Asibandaka Putta asked him, "But how, venerable sir, shall I refute the doctrine of the ascetic Gotama, who is so powerful and mighty?" And then he said, "Go, headman, approach the ascetic Gotama and ask him, 'Venerable sir, doesn't the Blessed One in many ways praise sympathy towards families, the protection of families, compassion towards families?' If when he is questioned by you thus, the ascetic Gotama answers, 'Yes, headman, the Tathagata in many ways praises sympathy for families, the protection of families, compassion for families,' then you should say to him, 'Then why, venerable sir, is the Blessed One wandering on tour with a large Sangha of monks at a time of famine, a time of scarcity, when crops are blighted and have turned to straw? The Blessed One is practicing for the annihilation of families, for the calamity of families, for the destruction of families. When the ascetic Gotama is posed this dilemma by you, he will neither be able to throw it up nor to gulp it down.'" Let's stop here for a moment. So this Nikaya Nataputta told this headman to ask the Buddha, "You are supposed to be compassionate. Why you go around with a large Sangha of monks and bringing hardship to the people? The people are already experiencing famine, not enough to eat. Now you bring such a large Sangha of monks begging for food. You are causing people difficulty. They already don't have enough to eat." Then Asibandaka Putta, the headman, said, "Yes, venerable sir." Then he rose from his seat, and after paying homage to Nikaya Nataputta, keeping him on his right, he departed and went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to the Blessed One, he sat down to one side and said to him, "Venerable sir, doesn't the Blessed One in many ways praise sympathy for families, the protection of families, compassion for families?" And he said, "Yes, headman, the Tathagata in many ways praises sympathy for families, protection of families, compassion for families." "Then why, venerable sir, is the Blessed One wandering on tour with a large Sangha of monks at a time of famine, a time of scarcity, when crops are blighted and have turned to straw? The Blessed One is practicing for the annihilation of families, for the calamity of families, for the destruction of families." And the Buddha said, "I recollect, or I remember, 91 aeons, that means world cycles back, headman, but I do not recall any family that has ever been destroyed merely by offering cooked alms food. Rather, whatever families there are that are rich, with much wealth and property, with abundant gold and silver, with abundant possessions and means of subsistence, with abundant wealth and grain, they all have become so from giving, from truthfulness and from self-control." Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha says, just because they give food to monks, they share their food with monks, it doesn't mean that they are destroyed. In fact, it's the opposite. If they give, in the future they'll be very, very rich. In fact, in the suttas, the Buddha always says, what is difficult to do is more meritorious. So like at the time of famine, when it's difficult to give and they can give, the merit is even more than in the time when there is no famine. And then also the Buddha says here that three things makes a person very wealthy. One is giving, charity. Second one is truthfulness. And the third is self-control. Self-control, that means you keep the precepts. You don't overindulge yourself in wine, women and song and all that. And then the Buddha continued. It meant there are 8 causes and conditions for the destruction of families. Families come to destruction on account of the king, on account of thieves, and on account of fire, or on account of water, or they do not find what they have put away, or mismanaged undertakings fail, or there arises within a family a wastrel who squanders, dissipates, and fritters away its wealth, and impermanence is the 8th. These are the 8 causes and conditions for the destruction of families. But while these 8 causes and conditions for the destruction of families exist, if anyone speaks thus of me, the Blessed One is practicing for the annihilation of families, for the calamity of families, for the destruction of families. If he does not abandon that assertion and that state of mind, and if he does not relinquish that view, then according to his deserts, he will be, as it were, dropped off in hell. When this was said, Asibandaka Putta, the head man, said to the Blessed One, Magnificent Venerable Sir, Magnificent Venerable Sir, and then he took refuge in the 3 triple gems and became a lay follower of the Buddha. So this last part, the Buddha says, 8 causes and conditions cause the downfall of a family, destruction of family. One is the king. For some reason, if you antagonize the king can get his soldiers to slaughter your whole family. During those times, the king was very powerful. Secondly, because of thieves or bandits, they can come and rob your house and kill your family members. Number 3, because of fire. Fire can destroy all your property. Number 4, because of water. Flood waters can kill all your crops, all your property. And then, the 5th, they do not find what they have put away. That means they are careless. They simply, they don't look after their things properly. On this one, a lot of people sometimes are very careless. Sometimes you think we have a lot of things simply can throw away. But actually, it's not good. Then another one, mismanaged undertakings fail. That means you do something and like business, business fails, or you plant crops and the crops fail, or whatever. Or there arises within a family a wastrel who squanders, dissipates, and fritters away his wealth. That means one of the family members is a squanderer, squanders away the property that was hard-earned. So in any organization also you have like this. Even in the monastery as well, we have to be careful. Sometimes some people stay in the monastery and especially monks, because monks sometimes they think that everything belongs to the Sangha. Sometimes they can waste things. They forget that the Sangha things are meant for the Sangha of the future. And then impermanence is, they say, the wealthy family usually doesn't go past 3 generations or something. Unless the family is very careful, then otherwise the wealth cannot continue in the family. So these are the 8 causes for the destruction of families. How families can come to ruin. So you have a family man, you take note of this. Now the next sutta is 42.10. I just mentioned one other thing. I see in this sutta, because of jealousy, this Niganta Nataputta tried to slander the Buddha. And sometimes for other reasons, sometimes even within our Buddhist religion, sometimes some people don't like a particular monk because he teaches different from what they are accustomed to hear. So sometimes for that reason they don't like him. Sometimes they can slander him. But they don't understand the karma is very bad. Now Sutta 42.10. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Now, on that occasion, the members of the king's retinue had assembled in the royal palace and were sitting together, and the following conversation arose. Gold and silver represents money. Gold and silver are allowable for the ascetics following the Sakyan sun. The ascetics following the Sakyan son consent to gold and silver. The ascetics following the Sakyan son accept gold and silver. On that occasion, Mani Chulaka, the head man, was sitting in that assembly. Then Mani Chulaka, the head man, said to that assembly, "Do not speak thus, masters. Gold and silver are not allowable for the ascetics following the Sakyan son. The ascetics following the Sakyan son do not consent to gold and silver. The ascetics following the Sakyan son do not accept gold and silver. They have renounced jewelry and gold. They have given up the use of gold and silver." And Mani Chulaka was able to convince that assembly. Stop here for a moment. So here, some of these people were saying that Buddhist monks are allowed to accept money. Why they say this? Because there were some rotten monks, even during the Buddha's time, who accepted money, but did not keep the precepts properly. Just as now, there are even much more monks who don't behave according to the precepts. But sometimes people misunderstand. They think the precept forbids a monk from touching money. That's not true. That is a misinterpretation by some monks purposely. The exact interpretation, after you see, according to this sutta, is that a monk is not allowed to possess money. Because if a monk possesses money, he can use the money in whichever way he likes. And if he uses the money to enjoy himself, then he's not of the nature of a monk, stated here. So in the monk's precepts, sometimes a monk is required to touch money or to touch valuable things. For example, in the monk's precepts, if a lay person comes to the monastery and left the purse with a lot of money in it and went home. So if a monk sees that, he is supposed, according to the precept, is required to take that purse and keep it for safekeeping. And then another day when that person returns to the monastery, he's supposed to hand it over to that person. So in the same way, if a monk goes to a lay person's house for dana or something, and then that lay person offers the food, and then in a hurry to do something, that lay person leaves the house, and the monk finishes his food, then he finds that the lay person maybe left a valuable diamond ring or something on the table, or a lot of money, the purse or something on the couch or something. And if the monk goes away and the house is not locked, that valuable object may get lost. So the monk is required to take that valuable object and keep it in safekeeping to return to the owner. So even in the precepts, the monk is required to do that. So a lot of people have the wrong impression that the monk is not supposed to touch the money. So why some monks interpret it in this way? Because they like to possess money. So when they possess money, like recently somebody told me about some nun. She got money in her purse, in the bag. And then she wanted to use the money. She asked the lay person to take the money from the bag and to do some charity or buy something or other. So she thinks as long as she doesn't touch the money, there's nothing wrong. That's not correct. The real thing is that you're not allowed to possess the money. So whatever money is given, say to the monastery, is not considered as belonging to the monk. It's for the use of the sangha and the present and the future. So if it is not used, it's supposed to be given back to the donors. So the monks can use the money, but they cannot at any time consider the money to be theirs. Because if the money is considered to be theirs, they can use it in any way they want. But if the money is not theirs, it's only for them to use when they require according to certain limits. That means only they can use the money only for allowable items. They cannot use it for luxurious items. So it's all very well spelled out in the Vinaya, monastic discipline. So in this case, even during the Buddha's time, some monks were accepting money. That's why these people were talking that surely the Buddha allowed these monks to accept. And this Mani Chulaka is more familiar with the Buddha. Then he told them, actually it's not allowed according to the precepts. And was able to convince them. Then Mani Chulaka approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him and sat down to one side. Sitting to one side, he reported to the Blessed One all that had happened, adding, I hope, Venerable Sir, that when I answered thus, I stated what has been said by the Blessed One, and did not misrepresent him with what is contrary to fact, that I explain in accordance with the Dhamma, and that no reasonable consequences of my statement gives rise for criticism. And the Buddha said, for sure, head man, when you answered thus, you stated what has been said by me, and did not misrepresent me with what is contrary to fact. You explain in accordance with the Dhamma, and no reasonable consequence of your statement gives ground for criticism. For head man, gold and silver are not allowable for the ascetics following the Sakyan Sun. The ascetics following the Sakyan Sun do not consent to gold and silver. The ascetics following the Sakyan Sun do not accept gold and silver. They have renounced jewelry and gold. They have given up the use of gold and silver. If gold and silver are allowable for anyone, the 5 cords of sensual pleasure are allowable for him. If the 5 cords of sensual pleasure are allowable for anyone, you can definitely consider him to be one who does not have the character of an ascetic or of a follower of the Sakyan Sun. Further, head man, I say this, straw may be sought by one needing straw. Timber may be sought by one needing timber. A cart can be sought by one needing a cart. A workman may be sought by one needing a workman. But I do not say that there is any method by which gold and silver may be consented to or sought. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says, his disciples have given up money, given up jewelry and property. And here he states very clearly why he does not allow monks to possess money. He says if monks are allowed money, then they can use it to enjoy the 5 cords of sensual pleasure, to buy whatever they like to enjoy. And if they enjoy worldly pleasures, then they are definitely not of the character, of the nature of a Buddhist monk. Sakyan Sun is Sakyaputta, not the follower of the Buddha. Then the Buddha says, a monk is allowed to look for straw, to look for timber, to look for cart, to look for workmen, but there is no way by which a monk may be allowed to look for money. So that's why it's not allowed for a monk to raise funds and all that. So we try as far as we can not to do anything to raise funds. If people give, then we use. Like when we started, we also lay quite low. So initially we had difficulties. But slowly as we do our work, gradually the support comes naturally. You don't have to look for money. You just do the right thing, and your karma will give you the blessings. The next sutta, 42.11. So you see, this sutta spells out exactly why money is not allowed for a monk. So here he says, if money is allowed to a monk, then he can enjoy worldly pleasures. In other words, when he say it's allowed, that means a monk is not allowed to possess money. If he considers the money as monastery money, then he cannot simply use as he like. There are rules for using the money. The next sutta, 42.11. Bhadraka. This word sometimes Bhadragaka. In the Pali Text Society book, it's called Bhadragaka. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at a town of the Malans named Uruvela Kappa. Then Bhadraka, the head man, approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, "It would be good, Venerable Sir, if the Blessed One would teach me about the origin and the passing away of suffering." And the Buddha said, "If head man, I were to teach you about the origin and the passing away of suffering with reference to the past, saying, so it was in the past, perplexity and uncertainty about that might arise in you. And if I were to teach you about the origin and the passing away of suffering with reference to the future, saying, so it will be in the future, Perplexity and uncertainty about that might arise in you. Instead, headman, while I am sitting right here and you are sitting right here, I will teach you about the origin and the passing away of suffering. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, Bhadraka the headman replied. The Blessed One said, what do you think, headman? Are there any people in Uruvela Kappa on whose account sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair would arise in you if they were to be executed, imprisoned, fined or censured? There are such people, Venerable Sir. But are there any people on Uruvela Kappa on whose account sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair would not arise in you in such an event? There are such people, Venerable Sir. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, don't talk about suffering in the past or the future. We talk about suffering, the origin of suffering right now. The Buddha says, are there people, if they were executed or imprisoned, etc., you would feel suffering? And he says there are. You see, like if your family members, your close friends, they are imprisoned or executed, definitely you suffer. And then he asks, are there other people, if they were imprisoned and executed and all that, you will not feel anything? And he says, there are also. What headman is the cause and reason why in relation to some people in Uruvela Kappa, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair would arise in you if they were to be executed, imprisoned, fined or censured, while in regard to others, no such sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair would arise in you? And he said, those people in Uruvela Kappa, Venerable Sir, in relation to whom sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair would arise in me if they were to be executed, imprisoned, fined or censured, these are the ones for whom I have desire and attachment. But those people in Uruvela Kappa, in relation to whom no sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair would arise in me, these are the ones for whom I have no desire and attachment. And the Buddha said, headman, by means of this principle that is seen, understood, immediately attained, fathom, apply the method to the past and to the future thus. Whatever suffering arose in the past, all that arose rooted in desire, with desire as its source, with desire as the root of suffering. Whatever suffering will arise in the future, all that will arise rooted in desire, with desire as its source, for desire is the root of suffering. And he said, it is wonderful, Venerable Sir, it is amazing, Venerable Sir, how well that has been stated by the Blessed One. Whatever suffering arises, all that is rooted in desire, has desire as its source, for desire is the root of suffering. Let's stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, just like these people you say, if something happened to them, they are imprisoned or executed, you feel a lot of sorrow, and you say it's because of desire for them, attachment to them. So in the same way the Buddha said, you should realize that whatever suffering in the past, that also arose for the same reason, because you have desire and attachment for them. And similarly in the future, if you suffer at all, it's also because of your desire and attachment for some people. And then this Bhadraka said, Venerable Sir, I have a boy named Chiravasi who stays at an outside residence. I rise early and send a man saying, go man and find out how Chiravasi is. Until that man returns, Venerable Sir, I am upset, thinking, I hope Chiravasi has not met with any affliction. Let's stop here for a moment. So this headman, he has a son, and he puts him somewhere else to stay somewhere else. Maybe he thinks if some bandits or the king decides to execute him, at least the son is not with him, will be safe. He put the son far away in some safe place. So every morning he sends a man to go and find out whether the son is alright. And the Buddha said, what do you think, headman? If Chiravasi were to be executed, imprisoned, fined or censured, would sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair arise in you? And he said, Venerable Sir, if Chiravasi were to be executed, imprisoned, fined or censured, even my life would be upset. So how could sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair not arise in me? So he's saying, if something happened to his son, his whole life, he will be upset. Then the Buddha said, in this way too, head man, it can be understood. Whatever suffering arises, all that arises rooted in desire, with desire as its source. For desire is the root of suffering. What do you think, head man? Before you saw Chiravasi's mother or heard about her, did you have any desire, attachment or affection for her? No, Venerable Sir. Then was it, head man, because of seeing her or hearing about her, that this desire, attachment and affection arose in you? Yes, Venerable Sir. What do you think, head man? If Chiravasi's mother were to be executed, imprisoned, fined or censured, would sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair arise in you? And he said, Venerable Sir, if Chiravasi's mother were to be executed, imprisoned, fined or censured, even my life would be upset. So how could sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair not arise in me? And the Buddha said, in this way too, head man, it can be understood. Whatever suffering arises, all that arises rooted in desire, with desire as its source. For desire is the root of suffering. That's the end of the sutta. So you see, the Buddha says, all suffering arises because of desire, because of attachment. There's one sutta where the Buddha said this, and somebody was not happy. He said, he has a lot of desire for his son or his daughter. So he thinks the son or the daughter gives him a lot of happiness. But he doesn't realize when something happens to the son or the daughter, then that extreme happiness turns to extreme pain and suffering. So this happiness and suffering are just two sides of our hand, two sides of a coin. They come together. If you have happiness, you must have suffering. So if you do away with happiness, then only you do away with suffering. That's the path. That's the holy path. If you don't want suffering, then you don't want enjoyment. You don't want happiness also. So you see this part, the Buddha asked him, before you saw Chiravasi's mother or heard about her, did you have any desire, attachment or affection for her? He said, no, Venerable Sir. It is interesting because a lot of us, we chase after things, and the things we chase after, we think they give us a lot of happiness. But later when something happens because of impermanence, they are the very things that give us suffering. So in this world, if you didn't chase after so many things, you don't have so many things, then you won't suffer so much. Okay, I think for this Samyutta, that's enough, because the next two suttas here are extremely long, but not much Dhamma in them. So we come to the next chapter, chapter 43, Asankhata, Samyutta. Asankhata means unconditioned. Sankhata means conditioned things. So Asankhata is unconditioned, and unconditioned always refers to Nibbana, state of Nibbana. Things in the world are all conditioned. That means there is birth or arising, and then there is, after it arises, then it stays for a while. Then after that, it starts to deteriorate. Then after that, it ceases or dies. But the unconditioned, there is no birth, there's no change, and there's no cessation, death. The first Sutta 43.1 as Savatthi, Buddha said, monks, I will teach you the unconditioned and the path leading to the unconditioned. Listen to that. And what, monks, is the unconditioned? The destruction of lust, the destruction of hatred, the destruction of delusion. This is called the unconditioned. For Nibbana also the same. When a person attains Nibbana, there is destruction of lust, hatred and delusion. And what monks is the path leading to the unconditioned? Mindfulness directed to the body. This is called the path leading to the unconditioned. Thus monks, I have taught you the unconditioned and the path leading to the unconditioned. Whatever should be done, monks, by a compassionate teacher out of compassion for his disciples, desiring their welfare, that I have done for you. These are the feet of trees, monks. These are empty huts or kutis. Meditate, monks. Do not be negligent, lest you regret it later. This is our instruction to you. It's the end of the sutta. So the Buddha says, the path to the unconditioned is mindfulness directed to the body. This body can be our human body. It can be something else. Like the Buddha says, the breath is also considered a body. So any form that you put attention on, you meditate on that form, that will bring you to the form jhana, that can be considered body. Because when we meditate, our aim is to attain the rupa jhanas first, and if possible, the arupa jhanas. So, why I say this? Because in the Majjhima Nikaya Suttas, Venerable Ananda said the type of meditation praised by the Buddha is the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. So, means that Buddhist meditation is the first jhana, second, third, fourth jhana. So the aim of meditation is to attain these four jhanas. Now to attain these four jhanas, these four jhanas are also called rupa jhanas. And rupa jhanas, to attain rupa jhana, you have to meditate on rupa. Rupa is a form. As a form. So it can be this body, it can be out of this body also. If you meditate on the form, they will bring you to the form jhana. So here the Buddha says, mindfulness directed to the body. That means to one object. Remember we went through one sutta where we talk about the unrestrained mind. The simile of the 6 animals that were allowed to go in 6 different directions. Then the Buddha says, to tame them, you have to tie them to a stout post or pillar. So that stout post or pillar represents one object of meditation. We meditate only on one object. If our mind strays away, we pull it back to that one object. The one object can be the breath, or it can be any other object, any other form. So here, it's mindfulness directed to the body. So the Buddha says, meditate, monks. This word meditate here in Pali is jayata. Jayata, you can consider it also to cultivate jhana. Cultivate jhana, monks. Do not be negligent. The next sutta is 43.2. The Buddha said, monks, I will teach you the unconditioned and the path leading to the unconditioned. Listen to that. And what, monks, is the unconditioned? The destruction of lust, the destruction of hatred, the destruction of delusion. This is called the unconditioned. And what, monks, is the path leading to the unconditioned? Samatha and vipassana. This is called the path leading to the unconditioned. That's the end of the sutta. So, to attain the unconditioned nibbana, 2 things are necessary. Samatha and vipassana. It's just like nowadays, with the commentaries have misled people to believe that vipassana alone is enough for liberation. This totally contradicts the Buddha's word. The Buddha says here, both samatha and vipassana are necessary. And several other suttas, the Buddha also mentioned this. The Buddha also mentioned that when you cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path totally, then samatha and vipassana will be led to work together in you. So, what is samatha? Samatha is meditation. Meditation meaning cultivation of calmness, tranquility, until you attain perfect samadhi. And perfect samadhi in the Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path, or the Buddha's teachings, is the 4 jhanas. All the 4 jhanas is samatha. And what is vipassana? Vipassana is contemplation. Contemplation. So when we listen to the Dhamma, and this contemplation is automatic. The moment you listen to Dhamma, the mind digests that Dhamma. That is contemplation. And when you understand the Dhamma, that will lead you to attain some path and fruition. So depending on your state of samadhi, if you don't have the 4 jhanas, when you listen to the suttas, you can attain sotapanna, first fruit or second fruit. But to attain the anagamin, the third fruit and the fourth fruit, it is very clear in the Majjhima Nikaya Sutta that the Buddha says you absolutely need the four jhanas. When a person has the four jhanas and he listens to a sutta like the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta or the Aditta Pariraya Sutta, then that person can become an anagamin or an arahant. So your attainment depends entirely on your samadhi, how calm your mind is. Because the deeper the samadhi, the purer the mind. And the Buddha says, a bright mind is the best condition for knowledge and insight to occur in the Anguttara Nikaya Sutta. So I'll stop here for tonight. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
When one comes to attach to the precept, one tends to develop aversion towards the moon. So, it says that not eating afternoon, taking a time to ourselves to distract to ourselves, take a look and see the sun almost high noon, and we have to stop down after very fast, and this is to keep that precept, and we mentioned that both precept and non-precept.
We cannot talk like that now because it contradicts the Buddha's word. But sometimes we may need to relax the rules slightly, if at all necessary. But generally speaking, we should uphold these precepts as best as we can. For example, sometimes a monk is working on a project, say like building a kuti or working on the water pipes or something, and they cannot finish in time. So you see, like according to our Vinaya, we have to eat before noon, finish our meal before noon. But sometimes because we are working and we cannot run away, and you have to finish the job. By the time you finish the job, it's maybe half an hour past noon. So in that respect, maybe you can relax slightly because of your work. You have to eat a bit late. But those are very rarely occur. Those kind of circumstances very rarely occur. So you cannot generalize and say that you should not be attached to the precepts. The thing is, the Buddha says that we must understand the purpose of the precepts. So the purpose of the precepts is to help us lead a very disciplined life. When we lead a disciplined life, then only we can discipline ourselves and we are not sloppy. So then only you can progress on the spiritual path, because the spiritual path needs a lot of discipline. Absolutely a huge amount of discipline. For example, the Buddha's teachings for us is to lead us on to liberation, to become an arahant. If you want to hope to become an arahant, you have to keep cutting your sleep. Keep cutting your sleep until you don't sleep at all. You are mindful 24 hours a day. If you don't have discipline, how can you do that? That's not. So, keeping this precept, not eating afternoon, is such a small precept. And it's such a small thing to do in the holy life. And you can't even do such a small thing. What big thing can you do? Yes, so you have to be very careful.
He takes refuge in the Buddha twice. In Sutta 2.9, he took instruction from Nikaya Sutta to approach Buddha and try to put down the Buddha. So
So in that case, where Nikanta Nataputta asked him to go and refute the Buddha's Dhamma, at that time he definitely, it would appear definitely that he was a follower of the Nikanta. And then how about the 42.8? Sometimes this one, there might be a mistake that they added this last part of taking refuge twice. Could be that in 42.9, probably at that time he was definitely a disciple of the Nigantas. And then 42.8, I would think on that occasion he was already a disciple of the Buddha. We see small mistakes like this can appear in the suttas because they were sort of transmitted from one mouth to another. So probably at the end of 42.8, there should be no taking of refuge in the Buddha because he's already a disciple of the Buddha. That's why the Buddha could talk to him about Nikanta Nataputta's teaching.
The other question is very technical things that have been mentioned is this belongs to the center of Sangha, belongs to the Sangha. So for example, during today's speakers, speaking outside of school, whatsoever, so we also have evidence, we have the duty to also belong to life or other school, or even and salvage, to do or means to salvage.
There are some things that belong to the Sangha. There are some things you can say belong to the monastery, not only the Sangha. And there are some things that don't belong to the Sangha. For example, food. Unless it is like things that allowable at night. Say like dark chocolate and prunes and dates and all that. If it's offered to the Sangha, then it belongs to the Sangha. Unless the Sangha thinks they have access, then they can give it to lay people, to the residents, the lay residents to use. And then there are certain things like monastery tools is meant for everybody, all the residents to use. But it is not strictly Sangha property, it's for general use of the residents. So even though it is not strictly Sangha property, it's a monastery property, but still lay people should be careful how they use it and not to damage it. If possible, take good care of it and put it properly. I remember in the sutta, one of the causes for the downfall, destruction of a family is to misplace items. Simply use items and simply misplace it, and then months later you find a rusted parang somewhere because somebody mislaid it somewhere and never bothered to bring it back or something. So have to be careful. But of course sometimes, we are not arahants, we are not mindful 24 hours a day. So sometimes small slip-ups like this forgivable. Even monks also do it, you see. The thing is, we try our best. Don't be sloppy. Sometimes we have bad habits from the past. So when you come to live in a monastery, you try to be more disciplined. Try to value the things in the monastery because a lot of things given in the monastery are given by devotees with a lot of devotion. Sometimes they themselves can't afford to use certain things or eat certain things, but because of the devotion to the Sangha, they offer certain things which are good quality. So don't go and waste it. Learn to appreciate.
The other thing is about origins. For example, we do have lots of teachings, science, political science, people. Sometimes we find that one very good one, the life and mechanism to pass on to for such market going around. So
Oh no, covetousness means like taking without permission. But this is slight greed. It's not covetousness, it's slight greed. They see something good, you want to possess it. I see it in a lot of people. Sometimes they see anything for free, they quickly want to take. But they take so much, sometimes they bring home, they never use. Some people bring a lot of CDs home. Do they listen to all of it? If you don't listen to all of it, you are wasting the devotees' funds. It's not good for you. Some people also take a lot of books, bring home, never read. That's not good. If you don't read, pass it to somebody else. You have no time to read, give it to somebody else. Don't hoard it. Some people like to hoard. Sometimes some people, they say they want something. And then when they find they have to pay for it, then they change their mind. So, just because it's available free, they have a different attitude. So we have to be careful. This is when we come to the Dhamma, we learn to be more skillful, to lead our lives more skillfully, and always reflect. The Buddha says, what you have done in the past, always reflect whether it's correct or not. And what you are doing now, also you must reflect whether it's good or not, good karma or not, skillful karma or not. And then what you are going to do also you must reflect, whether you should do it or should not do it, whether it's skillful or unskillful. So when we reflect in this way, then our three karmas are very pure. When our three karmas are very pure, we are always very happy, very happy. You don't have remorse. And when your mind is happy, when you meditate, you will calm down very fast. Calm down and attain concentration.
So, for one time of bread, we use 4 knots of butter. For one time of bread, we use 4 cans of Nikaya. So, are we using up our karma?
It's like this, like me. So to reflect on this, but of course, if you work very hard, then you deserve it. Never mind, close an eye. Give and take in this monastery, give and take. There's some monasteries are not so generous like here. There's some monasteries, they only bring out the drinks at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. And then after you take one drink, they keep all the Milo and the coffee and all that. Yeah, it's available 24 hours a day. You can enjoy yourself. Our karma is good, so we have a lot of offerings. When we stay in Thailand, we stay in those forest monasteries. 5:30 we go in the bath, arms round. By 7 o'clock we are back. We walk through the village. Sometimes we go to many houses. Sometimes rain also you have to go carry umbrella. Come back all wet. Then we go and sweep the floor and all this thing. About 1 hour later, what time? 8:30 or what? We will eat. Eat very early. We eat only one meal. After eating that one meal, the rest of the day nothing to eat. And then if the monastery is well supported, like what Pananachat, 4 o'clock we have our drink. And then your cup must be a small cup. Last time when I first went, I didn't know my cup was slightly bigger. They look at me and frown. Then give me even less. So at 4 o'clock, either we drink coffee, quite thick coffee, very sweet coffee, or we drink cocoa. Small amount only. That's all. Nothing else. Sometimes you're lucky, and sometimes you get a bit of cheese. Each one got 1 slice of cheese. Sometimes you get 1 or 2 pieces of dark chocolate. So 4 o'clock we have our drink, we chat a bit with the abbot, about half an hour, 1 hour like that. After that we go back to our kuti. Or before we go for the drink, we must go and do some work. Go to the well, go and haul the water from the well, put it in the buckets. 2 monks will carry the pole, the bamboo pole, the bucket in between the 2 monks, walking. Go to the toilet and clean the toilet, and clean the bathroom, and then fill up the water. The waters, like the monks when they come back from Abstain, they're supposed to wash their feet. There's a place where they have water, wash their feet. That one, you change the water every day. Must change the water, put water in there. So after the work only, we go and enjoy a drink. After the drink, go back and bathe. Then after that, evening chanting and all that. So you see, the monastery quite well supported. Also, you have 1 drink only. They go to a lot of other monasteries in Thailand. Even that 1 drink also cannot get. So what happened? Because we take only 1 meal, you dare not drink too much water. You drink too much water, you feel hungry. So you must control your water. When you're thirsty only, drink a bit of water. Thirsty, drink a bit of water. Drink too much water, at night the stomach grumbling, crock. So in Malaysia, we are very fortunate. And among the monasteries in Malaysia, we are very well supported. We have a lot of drinks and all that anytime available. So must appreciate it. Okay, shall we end here?